They told you that you were lazy, but they never asked, what if laziness is just fear wearing a mask? Jung warned us, the shadow we refuse to face will control us. Machiavelli knew, human nature is never as pure as it pretends to be. So the question is, are you living your life? Or is your shadow living it for you? What part of yourself do you fear the most? It isn't the world outside that haunts you, not the strangers, not the critics, not even the enemies plotting in the dark. The most terrifying enemy is the one that wears your own face, the part of you you've spent your whole life avoiding. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." It's a chilling thought. What if the story you think you're writing has already been written, not by reason, not by choice, but by the neglected, disowned fragments of your own psyche, the ones you swore you'd never become? We spend so much of life running from ourselves. We project, we distract, we numb. We tell the world a carefully crafted story of who we are, while burying the darker truths beneath silence. Yet the silence grows louder, and the more we suppress, the more the shadows return to claim us. Machiavelli knew this silence too, but he gave it another face. While Jung pointed inward, Machiavelli looked outward, at the theater of politics, at society. He saw the masks people wear, the scripts they play, the illusions of morality and virtue, used to conceal their hunger for power. He revealed another kind of shadow, not just within the self, but in the very structures that govern us. The shadow of ambition, the shadow of manipulation. The truth is unsettling. You are at war on two fronts. Within yourself, where the unconscious waits to erupt, and outside you, where power and deception shape every relationship you enter. One demands courage to confront, the other demands wisdom to survive. And here lies the mystery. What happens when we deny both? When we refuse to see the darkness within us and the masks society forces upon us? What kind of life do we end up living then? The answer is all around us. You see it in the friend who insists they're happy, but whose eyes whisper another story. You see it in the coworker who pretends to be loyal, but secretly resents every word you say. You see it in yourself, when you laugh while breaking inside, when you act strong but collapse in silence. The hidden enemy is never truly hidden. It bleeds through the cracks, and when ignored long enough, it doesn't just shape your destiny, it devours it. But the question remains, what is this shadow we fear so much? Why do we build such elaborate defenses to deny its presence? And what happens to us and to the world we live in when we continue pretending it isn't there? The answers will not comfort you, but they may set you free. From the moment we are born, we are taught what is acceptable and what must never be seen. A child throws a tantrum, and instead of asking why, we say, "Stop being difficult." A teenager retreats into silence, and instead of asking what's haunting you, we say, "Stop being lazy." By adulthood, we have learned the lesson well. Your true emotions are dangerous. Your true impulses, unacceptable. Your shadow must remain unseen. So we craft a mask. We polish it carefully. We make sure it shines beneath the light of society's expectations. The mask says, "I am kind. I am motivated. I am normal. I am good." But behind it lives everything we refuse to acknowledge. The anger, the jealousy, the despair, the cravings, the wounds. Jung called this the shadow self, the parts of us that have been banished to the unconscious, yet continue to shape us in silence. The world may call it laziness, or weakness, or lack of discipline, but often it is avoidance, an elaborate strategy to escape the battles raging inside. When the soul is at war with itself, no motivation seminar, no productivity hack, no affirmation of positivity can bring peace. Centuries earlier, Machiavelli saw this same truth, not in the psyche, but in politics. He warned rulers that to survive, they must appear virtuous, merciful, faithful, humane, while secretly acting with ruthless pragmatism. Appearances kept the masses calm. Reality kept power intact. The lesson is clear. The mask is not an accident. It is a necessity in a world that punishes honesty. Yet here lies the danger. When entire societies learn to hide their truth, When people polish their outer image, while neglecting their inner reality, what remains is a hollow shell of identity. Smiles on the surface, fractures beneath. Think about the person labeled lazy. The world sees a lack of energy, a lack of willpower, but rarely does anyone stop to ask, lazy compared to what? Is this not the same person who spends hours lost in fantasy, restless in secret obsessions, consumed by invisible battles? What we call laziness is often exhaustion. Exhaustion from constantly running, from responsibilities, from pain, from themselves. The shadow does not vanish simply because we deny it. Repression is not erasure. It is only storage. And like all hidden things, it grows heavier the longer it is carried. The one who avoids for a reason. And that reason is usually far more terrifying than the label society assigns them. Machiavelli would remind us, the mask cannot last forever. A prince who pretends to be merciful will reveal cruelty when power is threatened. A person who pretends to be endlessly kind will reveal resentment when pushed to the edge. The polished surface always cracks under pressure. But here is the cruel paradox. We believe the mask protects us from rejection. In truth, it only ensures that we are never truly seen. We may be admired, respected, even envied, but deep down, we know it is the mask being loved, not the fractured human beneath it. And so the cycle continues. The fear of rejection breeds more masks. The denial of the shadow breeds more exhaustion. We run faster. We polish harder. We perform goodness. While the darker drives, envy, greed, lust, rage, gnaw at us from within. What begins as a survival strategy becomes a prison. And inside that prison, the hidden enemy grows stronger. This is why Jung warned, the unconscious will direct your life until you bring it to light. And why Machiavelli warned, appearances without substance will eventually destroy those who wield them. The truth is this, avoidance is never neutral. The cost of repression is identity itself. When you live only through masks, you forget what it means to be whole. You become a stranger to yourself, presentable to the world, yet absent in your own life. So we must ask, what happens to a society built on avoidance? What happens when millions walk the world wearing polished masks, while secretly collapsing inside? The answer, as history always shows, is the same. A culture of masks does not create harmony. It creates dissonance, distrust, decay. Because no matter how convincing the mask, the shadow always finds a way back. Every person carries a double life, the life they display and the one they bury. Carl Jung called the buried half the shadow. But the shadow is not simply evil. It is not a monster hiding in the basement of your mind. It is more subtle, more ordinary, and, in many ways, more dangerous. The shadow is every impulse you were told was unacceptable, every desire you censored, every fear you dismissed. It is every piece of yourself you locked away because the world whispered, not this, not here, not you. Think of the child who hears, stop crying, be strong. The emotion doesn't vanish. It hides. Think of the teenager who is shamed for jealousy. The envy doesn't disappear. It slips underground, festering in silence. Over time, these fragments gather. They form a hidden reservoir within us, the shadow self. And here lies the tragedy. What you refuse to face eventually controls you. Jung believed we live under an illusion, the illusion of goodness. But beneath that illusion, we are often manipulated by the forces we deny. You might believe you are kind, but what if that kindness is fueled by fear of rejection? You might believe you are disciplined, but what if discipline is only a mask, hiding a terror of failure? The shadow complicates everything. It twists what we call virtues into disguises. Centuries before Jung, Machiavelli was saying something eerily similar. Not about the psyche, but about politics. He looked at rulers, nobles, and commoners alike, and declared a grim truth. People are not driven by virtue. They are driven by fear, ambition, and self-interest. A prince may preach morality to keep his subjects docile. A priest may perform piety to strengthen his influence. But beneath the mask, Machiavelli insisted, lies the same human core, the hunger for power, for survival, for advantage. This is where Jung and Machiavelli meet. Jung said, "You are not as virtuous as you believe." Machiavelli said, neither is anyone else. Both demanded we look past illusions, the illusion of the innocent self and the illusion of the virtuous leader. To ignore these truths, they warned, is to invite ruin, and history proves them right. Consider the leader who insists on his unshakable morality. He surrounds himself with flatterers, convinced that his virtue alone will sustain him. But his blind spots become weapons in the hands of rivals. Or consider the ordinary person who denies their darker drives. They may project their aggression onto others, seeing enemies everywhere, never realizing the hostility originates within. In both cases, the refusal to face truth creates the very downfall they fear. Take Richard Nixon, obsessed with control, desperate to appear strong. He repressed the paranoia and insecurity that defined him. But the shadow does not stay buried. It leaked out in secret recordings, cover-ups, and abuses of power. The man who could not face his inner fear of weakness collapsed under the weight of his own deception. Or look at the revolutions of history. Rulers clinging to their image of moral superiority, while ignoring the hunger, resentment, and ambition of their people. They painted themselves as fathers of the nation, saviors of morality, until the shadow of collective rage rose and tore their masts apart. The French monarchy, blinded by its self-image, ignored the gathering storm until the guillotine became its answer. The personal shadow and the political shadow are mirrors of each other. One destroys the individual, the other destroys empires, and both follow the same law. What is denied grows stronger in silence. To Jung, the path forward was confrontation, not annihilation of the shadow, but integration. To recognize your darker impulses as part of yourself, instead of projecting them onto the world. Integration creates wholeness. Denial creates fragmentation. To Machiavelli, survival required ruthless honesty about human nature. A leader who assumes people are good will be betrayed. A leader who assumes people are selfish and fearful may govern with clear eyes. He did not advocate cruelty for its own sake, but he warned against naivety. For him, the greatest danger was blindness, the refusal to see the world as it is. Put simply, Jung warned against blindness to your inner nature. Machiavelli warned against blindness to human nature. Together, they reveal the same truth. Illusion is fatal, and yet, illusions are seductive. It is easier to say, I am not jealous, I am not angry, I am not cruel, than to admit the darker truth. It is easier to believe in the noble leader than to accept the corruption behind the mask. Denial is comforting, but comfort is not survival. The question is not whether you have a shadow. You do. The question is whether you will face it, or let it face you on its own terms. The question is not whether human beings are selfish, fearful, and ambitious. They are. The question is whether you will accept this truth and navigate it wisely, or live in naivety until reality strips your illusions away. Every downfall, personal or political, begins with denial. Every act of wisdom begins with confrontation. So ask yourself, which path are you walking? What happens when you refuse to face the parts of yourself you fear the most? The answer is simple and devastating. They face you. On the personal level, the shadow rules us quietly, invisibly. It does not announce itself with thunder. It seeps into the cracks of daily life. You call it procrastination, but often it is fear disguised as delay. You call it addiction, but often it is pain disguised as pleasure. You call it bad luck in relationships, but often it is projection, your unacknowledged anger, your jealousy, your neediness, pushed onto someone else until they collapse beneath its weight. The tragedy is that denial feels safe. You think, if I ignore it, it will go away. But the opposite is true. The more you repress, the more it dictates your choices. The more you hide it, the more it shapes your fate. Jung warned us, the unconscious does not die when ignored. It simply takes the wheel of your life, steering you toward outcomes you will later call destiny. Think of the one who swears they are not angry, yet erupts in rage at trivial things. The one who insists they are independent, yet cannot survive without constant validation. The one who denies loneliness, yet clings desperately to relationships that destroy them. In every case, the shadow, unseen, unacknowledged, writes the script. But the danger is not only personal. On the societal level, the cost of denial is far greater. This is where Machiavelli's realism strikes with brutal clarity. He warned rulers that the greatest threat to power is not cruelty, but blindness. A prince who pretends to be pure, who denies his own flaws, will one day be consumed by them. And history is filled with such rulers. Leaders who preached morality, but drowned in corruption. Leaders who projected confidence, but were hollow with insecurity. Leaders who denied ambition in public, while secretly building empires of betrayal. Their shadows did not vanish. They ruled from the shadows until collapse was inevitable. Think of the Roman emperor, claiming divine purity while indulging in endless excess. Remembered not as a god, but as a tyrant. Think of modern politicians, speaking of unity while secretly stoking division. Their denied hunger for power festers until it destroys both them and their people. Machiavelli was clear. Denial does not protect power. It corrodes it. To govern wisely is to acknowledge weakness, to anticipate betrayal, to accept that fear and ambition shape every decision. Leaders who deny these truths live in illusions, and illusions do not survive reality. Here, Jung and Machiavelli converge on the same haunting lesson. To deny human darkness is not to escape it, but to be ruled by it. The more you insist you are good, the more your unacknowledged impulses leak out in cruelty. The more a leader insists on virtue, the more their hidden corruption becomes their downfall. Denial does not lead to safety. It leads to collapse. And so we return to the question, are you living your life? Or is your shadow living it for you? When you procrastinate, who really made that decision? You, or your hidden fear of failure? When you sabotage a relationship, who whispered the words? You, or your hidden fear of intimacy? When leaders betray nations, who writes the script? Them, or the darkness they refuse to face? The answer is terrifying, because it reveals how little control we truly have. When we live in denial, we think we are rational. We think we are free. But until we confront the shadow, we are puppets, our strings pulled by the very forces we silence. The cost of denial is not only failure, it is emptiness. A life lived not by choice, but by avoidance. A society governed not by wisdom, but by delusion. This is why Jung demanded the integration of the shadow, and why Machiavelli demanded ruthless honesty about human nature. Both knew, to ignore the darkness is to be devoured by it. So ask yourself again, slowly, carefully, are you living your life? Or is your shadow living it for you? The shadow is not the end of us. It is the beginning. We imagine that facing our darkness means destruction, that if we open the door to what we've repressed, it would consume us whole. But Carl Jung insisted the opposite. The shadow is not there to destroy you. It is there to complete you. He called this process individuation, the lifelong work of becoming whole by reclaiming the pieces of yourself you left behind. Integration does not mean indulging your darkest instincts, and it does not mean pretending they don't exist. It means recognizing them as part of the human experience, part of your experience. Think of anger. Left in the shadows, it erupts as cruelty, resentment, violence. But integrated, anger becomes justice. The courage to say, this is wrong, and it must be corrected. Think of fear. Repressed, it paralyzes. It festers as anxiety. But integrated, fear becomes wisdom, the quiet voice that warns you of danger before it arrives. Think of ambition. Denied, it leaks out as envy, sabotage, and self-destruction. But integrated, ambition becomes creation, the fire that drives you to build, to strive, to bring something new into the world. The shadow is energy. Energy that, when denied, poisons you, but when owned, transforms you. And just as the individual must face their inner shadow, Machiavelli reminds us that societies must face their outer shadow, the truth of human nature. People are not endlessly virtuous, not endlessly selfless. They are moved by fear, by desire, by ambition. Pretending otherwise does not build stronger nations or healthier relationships. It builds illusions, illusions that collapse the moment they are tested by reality. A leader who confronts this truth does not descend into cruelty. They govern with clarity. They do not expect saints, so they are not shocked by betrayal. They do not demand perfection, so they are prepared for flaws. Just as Jung's individual learns to embrace their inner contradictions, Machiavelli's ruler learns to navigate the contradictions of human society. The path of confrontation, then, is not a path of despair. It is the only path to freedom. Imagine a life where you no longer run from yourself, where the emotions you once feared become guides, where the drives you once denied become sources of strength, where the mask falls away, and you are no longer loved for an illusion, but seen, and perhaps finally loved, for who you are. This does not mean perfection. Jung was clear: wholeness is not the same as goodness. To be whole is to carry light and shadow together, to live in balance with both. And Machiavelli was equally clear: survival is not about purity, but adaptability. To endure, one must accept the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Together, they leave us with a challenge both terrifying and liberating. Stop pretending. Stop pretending you are without darkness. Stop pretending others are without self-interest. Stop pretending the world will reward you for your masks. Instead, confront, integrate, adapt. The shadow does not vanish, but once faced, it loses its power to rule you. The leader who acknowledges their flaws cannot be blackmailed by them. The person who admits their fears cannot be enslaved by them. Confrontation is the beginning of freedom, because nothing hidden can control you anymore. Think of the myths we've carried for centuries. The hero who enters the cave, the warrior who slays the dragon, the seeker who descends into the underworld. What do these stories reveal? That salvation does not come from avoiding the darkness. It comes from walking straight into it. The treasure is always hidden in the place you fear to enter. So what does this mean for you? It means the anger you repress could be the very strength you need. The fear you avoid could be the wisdom that saves you. The ambition you deny could be the fire that builds your future. And the mask you cling to could be the final barrier between you and a life that feels real. The question is not whether you have a shadow. You do. The question is whether you will continue to run from it, or whether you will step into the cave and claim it as your own. Because until you do, the shadow is not just yours. It is living for you. It is making your choices. It is shaping your destiny. But when you confront it, when you own what you fear, you begin at last to live. We have walked through silence, through masks, through shadows and denial. We have seen what happens when we run from ourselves, and what happens when leaders run from truth. Now, we return to the final lesson, the place where two seemingly distant thinkers meet. In the same truth, Jung teaches us, you must face the unconscious. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the part of you you have not yet claimed. If ignored, it rules you. If confronted, it completes you. Machiavelli teaches us, you must face human nature. People are not angels, nor are they devils. They are driven by fear, by desire, by ambition. To govern wisely is to see clearly, without illusion. To expect perfection from others is to invite betrayal. Together, they leave us with a single truth. Clarity is power, not illusion, not denial, not masks. Clarity, the clarity to see yourself as you are. The clarity to see others as they are. The clarity to walk without naivety, but also without self-deception. Strength is not born from pretending to be flawless. It is born from admitting that you are not. Power is not born from pretending society is pure. It is born from understanding its drives, its flaws, its shadows, and learning how to navigate them. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to make you whole. Every part of yourself you once feared, your anger, your fear, your ambition, can become the foundation of your strength once integrated. What destroys us is not darkness itself. What destroys us is the refusal to see it. Jung warned, what we deny becomes fate. Machiavelli warned, what we ignore becomes downfall. But what we accept, what we face with courage, becomes freedom. And so we end with the question that has always been waiting for you. Will you keep running from your shadow? Or will you finally turn and see yourself as you are? Because in that moment of turning, in that moment of confrontation, begins the only kind of freedom worth having. The freedom to live as a whole human being, not a fractured mask. If these ideas spoke to you, if they lit a spark, or unsettled something long buried within you, then walk further with us. Subscribe, like, share this journey with others who dare to question, who dare to confront, who dare to see, not because it feeds an algorithm, but because it feeds a conversation the world desperately needs. A conversation about who we really are. Beneath the shadows, beyond the masks, the story doesn't end here. It begins now, with you.